The book of Ecclesiastes, to me, is one of my very favorites of the Hebrew scriptures. It is interesting. It's about life and the vanity of life and how to find meaning in the transitoriness of this life. This is the theme that will be developed. And there's an interesting quote that I would like to give. It's found in the Sonsino commentaries of the Bible by Reichart and Cohen. And I appreciated this is on page 105. I appreciate their work on Ecclesiastes, and their introduction begins in this way. In the introduction to his volume of literary essays, The New Spirit, Havelock Ellis writes, quote, "The old cycles are forever renewed, and it is no paradox that he who would advance can never cling too close to the past. The thing that has been is the thing that will be again. If we realize that, we may avoid many of the disillusions, miseries, insanities that forever accompany the throes of new birth. Set your shoulder joyously to the world's wheel. You may spare yourself some unhappiness if, beforehand, you slip the book of Ecclesiastes beneath your arm." I really like that beginning introduction that is quoted from Havelock Ellis. And how true that is. It sort of emphasizes the importance of spending time in a book like the Kohelet or Ecclesiastes. As I look at this book, I would like to take my time working from the Hebrew, looking at an inductive grammatical analysis, as well as a brief commentary, verse by verse or section by section of each verse, I should say. So let me begin in chapter 1, verse 1. I'm going to try to hold these to about 15 minutes and then break it up into different sections. So we begin. Divrei Kohelet ben David Melech Berushalayim. The words of the Kohelet, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Notice here, Kohelet is a feminine, it's a participle, cal participle, feminine, singular from kahal. And this may help us understand the purpose of the book. The Hebrew word kahal means assembly. And perhaps the thought is it's one who is addressing an assembly of learners. And he calls himself Ben David Melech Berushalayim, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. And as I said in my introduction to the book, I personally take a traditional viewpoint, and that was the viewpoint of Cohen, by the way, in the Jewish commentary that I appreciate very much, Sonsino commentary of the Bible. And Reichert and Cohen did this together, and I appreciated their introduction. And Cohen supports very nicely, I think, the traditional view of authorship. So the words of the preacher, the Kohelet, one who addresses an assembly to teach wisdom, son of David, king in Jerusalem. And then we begin to hear in the next phrase the theme that will reappear throughout the book. Havel Havalim, Amar Kohelet. Havel Havalim, Hakol Havel. That is vanity of vanities, says the preacher or the one who is addressing the assembly, Kohelet. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity or Havel. It's interesting. There are actually 7 words repeating Havel. Havel, and then it's repeated twice in Havalim, and then Havel, Havalim, once and twice, and then Hakol Havel. So we're looking at 7 7 uses of Havel. And we begin with Havel Havelin, vanity of vanities. And in the Hebrew text, this is what we call a superlative. We could almost say the most vain thing that we can imagine seems to be the idea. Now, what does vanity mean? Havel means something like transitory, that which is fleeting. It's sort of like taking a breath on a cold day and seeing your breath. It's there for a moment and then it's gone. And he's going to view life as that which is very, very transitory, like taking a breath on a cold day. It's interesting, too, that this superlative degree is focusing upon how everything is fleeting and transitory. All is vanity. It's interesting, as I was looking through the commentary by Cohen and Reichert, I appreciated a statement that was made on page 109 of that commentary series. A rabbi taught, I'm quoting, that Kohelet spoke of 7 vanities to correspond with the 7 stages of man which he experiences in his lifetime. At 1 year, he is like a king, and how true that is, how we pamper and baby a newborn. Everyone embraces and pays deference to him or her. At 2 and 3 years, he is like a pig groping in the gutters. I suppose we're talking about crawling around and groping around. At 10, he skips like a young goat, looking at the energy and skipping around. And at 20, he neighs like a horse and seeks a wife. And looking at that stage of life. After marriage, he bears burdens like an ass and hardens his face like a dog in search of sustenance. And I couldn't help but noting that, how that throughout life, after at this stage, man and woman, they're constantly working, trying to provide enough to live on. And this is especially true in a time that we're living too, with all the inflation and everything. And then the last stage, in old age, he is like an ape. Now, I was wondering what that meant, but I was thinking maybe he slows down and begins to lumber around like an ape. I know I find myself at almost 81, I think in that last category. But I think as we age, we don't have the energy, the skipping, and all the things that we had in the earlier stages of life. We spend a lot of time snoozing too. So I think this it captured my attention as a very interesting way that a rabbi spoke about the stages of life. And so the theme that we're going to see from beginning to end is the endless repetition of Havel, of vanity, of the transitoriness of life. It'll be repeated over and over, and at the end, it'll be repeated again. So I'm going to stop there with this particular video. I'm going to take my time working through the grammar and also working through verse by verse, even phrase by phrase of the Hebrew text. So let me stop there in this video, looking at verse 1 and 2.